15 years ago, I married the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. Her name is Amy. Our story started like something out of a movie, a chance meeting at a college party when she was just a sophomore. I was captivated by her energy, her laugh, and the way she could light up a room. My name is Mark Butler, and for 3 years, Amy and I were inseparable. We talked about everything, from our wildest dreams to the quiet life we imagined building together. But life, as it often does, had its twists. During Amy's senior year, we hit a rough patch and broke up. Even then, we both knew it wasn't the end. 6 months later, we reunited and decided to get married. I couldn't believe how lucky I was to call her my wife. She was my best friend, my partner, and the one person I trusted above all else. The early years of our marriage were filled with love and laughter. We built a life together, full of promises and dreams for the future. But looking back, I realize now that trust isn't just built on promises. It's built on actions. And sometimes, the cracks in a relationship are too small to notice until they shatter everything you thought you knew. This is the story of how my world fell apart, how betrayal turned my marriage into a nightmare, and how I found the strength to take control of my life again. It all started at a barbecue party, just 6 months into our marriage. Amy and I were invited to a casual evening with a few other couples we knew. It was one of those gatherings where the conversations flowed as freely as the drinks. There was a campfire crackling in the background, grilled steaks on the table, and the kind of relaxed atmosphere that makes you forget about the outside world. As the night wore on and the group grew smaller, the conversation turned to something I'd never heard of before: the hall pass. I remember sitting there confused as Sadie, a petite blonde with a sly grin, explained it to me. "It's simple," she said, leaning in. "A hall pass is a free pass to break your marriage vows for one night. You know, with a celebrity or someone you'd never have a chance with otherwise." The idea was ridiculous to me. "So, this is just a joke, right?" I asked, half laughing. But the other couples didn't laugh with me. Instead, Tom, Sadie's husband, clapped me on the back and said, "Not necessarily, buddy. Some of us actually do it." My stomach twisted as Tom casually explained how he and Sadie had given each other real hall passes, permission to sleep with someone else if the opportunity arose. "It's exciting," Tom said, laughing, "and it keeps things fresh in the marriage." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Even more shocking was when another couple chimed in, admitting they'd done the same. One woman, Katie, even shared a story about how she used her hall pass during a work trip to comfort a grieving co-worker. Her husband, Carl, smiled and said he didn't mind, as long as he got his turn someday. Amy sat next to me, her hand resting on mine, but she was unusually quiet. As the couples around us started naming their fantasy picks, she suddenly perked up. "I think I'd pick Joshua Morrow from that soap opera I love," she said with a nervous laugh. Then she nudged me playfully. "What about you, Mark?" I hesitated. It felt wrong to even entertain the idea, but not wanting to seem uptight, I tossed out a random name I barely remembered. The group laughed and moved on, but something about the conversation lingered in the air. When we got home that night, Amy was more passionate than I'd ever seen her. In the heat of the moment, she whispered something I'll never forget. "I imagined him," she said softly, her breath warm against my ear. That fantasy man from the party. It made it feel different. The next morning, I made my stance clear. "That was just a game," I told her. "I don't ever want to hear about this hall pass nonsense again." Amy smiled and promised it was nothing, just a silly game. I wanted to believe her. But in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled there. Something about that night had planted a seed, and I had no idea how deeply it would grow. Life moved forward after that strange night at the barbecue. Amy and I settled into married life, quickly starting a family. We had 2 wonderful kids, a boy and a girl, and our days became filled with the chaos and joy of parenting. From early morning soccer games to late-night homework sessions, our lives revolved around our children. Amy and I seemed like the perfect couple. We were a team, navigating life's challenges together, building a home and creating memories. But as the years went by, I couldn't shake the memory of that night around the campfire. It wasn't something I thought about every day, but it would resurface occasionally, like a whisper in the back of my mind. We eventually lost touch with the couples from that party. People moved, lives got busy, and friendships faded. Even Sadie and Tom, who had been the life of the party that night, drifted out of our lives. I heard through the grapevine that they'd divorced, but I didn't know the details and didn't think much of it at the time. Then, a couple of years ago, I ran into Tom at a bar. It was completely by chance. I'd stopped in after work, looking to unwind, and there he was, nursing a drink by himself. He looked older, worn down, like someone carrying the weight of regret. We started talking, catching up on life, and before long, the conversation turned to that infamous hall pass night. Tom laughed bitterly and said, "You know, that stupid idea destroyed all our marriages." I was stunned. He went on to explain how all 3 couples who had embraced the hall pass concept had ended up divorced. "It starts as fun," he said, swirling the ice in his glass. "But once someone actually uses it, everything changes. Suspicion, jealousy, comparisons, they poison the marriage. None of us thought it would ruin us, but it did." Hearing his story only confirmed what I'd believed all along. The idea of a hall pass might sound harmless, even exciting, but in reality, it's a ticking time bomb. I didn't tell Amy about my conversation with Tom. Life was hectic, and it didn't seem relevant. But now, I wish I had. Maybe it could have changed what was coming. Maybe it could have saved us. It was a Thursday night, and Amy was out of town for a work conference in Los Angeles. The kids were asleep, and I was winding down after a long day. The house felt quiet, almost too quiet, when my phone rang. It was Amy. At first I smiled, expecting a casual check-in about her day, but the moment I answered, I knew something was off. The background noise was loud, music, laughter, and the unmistakable hum of a lively crowd. Amy's voice came through, slightly slurred. She'd clearly been drinking. "You won't believe it," she exclaimed, her tone light and excited. "Guess who I just met? Joshua, from my favorite soap opera." I chuckled nervously, unsure where this was going. "That's cool. Did you get a picture or something?" She laughed. "Better than that. He likes me, Mark. Can you believe it? He actually likes me." There was a pause, and then she said it. The words that felt like a punch to my gut. "I'm going to use my hall pass." I froze. "What did you just say?" "My hall pass, Mark," she repeated, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "You remember, right? From the party years ago. I knew you'd understand. I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." The noise on her end got louder, and I could barely hear her. But those words echoed in my mind. Hall pass? Opportunity? What was she talking about? "Amy, you're not making sense," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're joking, right? This isn't funny." She laughed again, but it sounded different this time. Distant, careless. "No joke, darling. Don't worry, I'll see you Saturday." The line went dead. For a moment I sat there, staring at my phone, hoping I'd misunderstood. I immediately tried calling her back, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic set in. I sent her text after text, begging her to call me, pleading with her not to do anything reckless. I warned her that there would be consequences if she crossed a line. But the night passed in agonizing silence. No calls, no replies, nothing. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing with every horrible possibility. I tried calling Amy again, but her phone was still off. The pit in my stomach grew deeper. I had no way of knowing what was happening, and every scenario I imagined was worse than the last. Desperate for answers, I dropped the kids off at my parents' house after work and drove to see my friend Jack. His wife, Jenny, worked with Amy and had gone on the same trip. If anyone knew what was going on, it would be her. Jack welcomed me in, surprised by my unannounced visit. I wasted no time. "Jack, I need your help. I can't reach Amy, and I'm worried. Can you call Jenny and find out if she's seen her?" He nodded, though his face was lined with concern. "Of course, but is everything okay, Mark?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Just don't tell Jenny I'm here. I don't want Amy to ask her to cover for her if something's going on." Jack agreed and called his wife while I sat there, my heart pounding. I turned on the voice recorder on my phone, a decision I made almost instinctively. Jenny answered on the first ring, her voice cheerful. They chatted briefly before Jack brought up Amy. "Have you seen much of her? Mark's been trying to reach her and hasn't had any luck." There was a pause on Jenny's end, then a hesitant reply. Don't tell him you spoke to me, okay? Last time I saw her was last night at the club. We were drinking, and that soap opera star showed up. Amy got his autograph. They danced a bit, and then she mentioned that hall pass thing." My chest tightened. Jenny continued, her tone dropping to a whisper. "She told me it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and left with him." I tried to talk her out of it, but she wouldn't listen. "Please, Jack, don't tell Mark." Jack ended the call, his face pale as he turned to me. "I'm sorry, Mark. Is this true? Do you guys actually have some kind of hall pass agreement?" I shook my head, anger bubbling under the surface. "No, Jack, we don't." What started as confusion had now turned into clarity and fury. Whatever Amy thought she was doing, it wasn't just reckless. It was betrayal. And I knew, in that moment, that things would never be the same. After hearing Jenny's confession on the call, my mind was racing. The betrayal felt like a knife to the chest, but my instincts kicked in. I needed proof. I couldn't let Amy talk her way out of this. If she had gone through with what Jenny described, I needed concrete evidence to confront her, and if necessary, to protect myself and the kids from whatever fallout would come next. "Jack," I said, my voice cold but steady. "Thanks for making that call. I appreciate it. But now, I need to figure out what to do." He nodded, his face lined with concern, but I could see he didn't want to get more involved. That was fine. This was my fight now. When I got home, I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. I replayed the recording of Jenny's call several times, each word driving the betrayal deeper into my heart. It wasn't just the act itself. It was the casual way Amy had dismissed me, the arrogance of assuming I'd be fine with it. I started thinking back to every moment that could help me build a clearer picture. I remembered Jenny saying that Amy had gotten the soap star's autograph. That stood out to me. Amy loved keeping sentimental things, and if she really thought this was some once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, she wouldn't have thrown away a trophy like that. I went upstairs and started searching. I combed through her drawers, her side of the closet, and even the storage boxes under our bed. Nothing. But then I remembered the old briefcase she kept tucked away in the back of the closet. It was something she rarely used, which made it the perfect hiding spot. The briefcase was locked, but Amy wasn't exactly creative with passwords. I tried the code she always used, our wedding anniversary, and it clicked open. Inside, beneath some old work folders, I found it. A glossy promotional photo of the soap opera star. His signature sprawled across the front read, "To Amy, my biggest fan, Joshua." But that wasn't the worst part. On the back, written in bold, confident letters, were the words, "You were an amazing lover. Joshua." I sat there, staring at the photo, the weight of the betrayal crashing down on me. My hands shook as I carefully placed it back in the briefcase, exactly as I'd found it. I needed more than this photo. Jenny's call and Amy's giddy confession were already damning. But I knew if I wanted to hold her accountable, I needed to be thorough. The next step was her phone. Amy had dropped hints in the past about syncing her photos and messages to the cloud. I powered up her laptop and accessed her iCloud account. She wasn't exactly tech-savvy, and her login credentials were easy to guess. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Buried in her photo album were 3 pictures from the conference, one of Amy posing with the soap star, another of the 2 of them dancing, and a third with Amy, the star, and Jenny smiling at the club. I copied the photos onto a flash drive, feeling a mix of anger and sadness as I stared at them. Her credit card statements were next. I scrolled through her recent transactions and found one that matched the name of the club in the photos. It was all adding up. By the time I finished, I had enough evidence to confirm what I already knew in my heart. Amy had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But gathering the proof didn't bring me peace. If anything, it made the betrayal sharper, more vivid. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer. I needed someone ruthless, someone who wouldn't let Amy's lies twist the truth. That's when I met Vicki Sampson, a divorce attorney known for her no-nonsense approach to infidelity cases. I laid out everything: the recording, the photos, the autograph, and the timeline of events. When I finished, Vicki leaned back in her chair, a calculating smile on her face. "Mark," she said, "you've done your homework. Now it's time to make her face the consequences. But we need to play this smart. Let her think she's winning. Let her think you're powerless. Then we hit her with everything when she least expects it." I left her office that day with a plan. Amy had made her choices, and now it was my turn. The fight wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about protecting myself and my kids from the fallout of the mess she'd created. The stage was set, and Amy didn't even know it yet. This wasn't just about gathering evidence. It was about reclaiming control of my life, no matter how painful the process would be. Amy came home on Saturday, breezing through the door like everything was normal. She dragged her suitcase behind her, a bright smile on her face, as if she'd just returned from a relaxing getaway. "Oh my God, what a crazy trip," she exclaimed, dropping her bags in the hallway. I sat in the living room, waiting, my heart pounding. The evidence I'd found and the betrayal I'd uncovered were like a storm raging inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to hear it from her, to see if she would own up to what she'd done. "Hey," I said casually, watching her carefully. "I tried calling you while you were gone. Your phone must have been off." Amy sighed dramatically. "It broke. I dropped it, and the screen shattered. Total nightmare. But everything's fine now." She paused, her tone shifting to something more excited. "Oh, and guess what? I met Joshua Morrow. You know, the star from my soap opera." My stomach twisted, but I kept my face neutral. "Really? That's something." Amy's smile widened. "Yeah, we danced a bit, talked about life. He's so charming." Then she added, almost offhandedly, I used my hall pass. Her words hung in the air, like a bomb waiting to go off. I stared at her, struggling to contain the fury building inside me. Your hall pass? I said slowly. She nodded, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. Yeah, remember? From that party, years ago? You know, we agreed. It was just a game. But this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I knew you'd understand. Something inside me snapped. Understand? Amy, you cheated on me. You betrayed our marriage, and you're standing here grinning about it. Her face fell, confusion flickering in her eyes. Cheated? What are you talking about? It wasn't cheating. It was just the hall pass. I told you about it. I even called you. You called me to tell me you were breaking our vows, I said, my voice rising. And you expect me to be fine with that? Amy's smile faltered, replaced by frustration. Mark, you're overreacting. It was 2 nights. It's not a big deal. You'd do the same thing if you had the chance. I stood up, unable to hold back any longer. Don't you dare put this on me. I made it clear years ago that the hall pass was just a stupid game, nothing more. You knew that, and you did it anyway. You destroyed our marriage the moment you decided some fantasy was more important than our family. For a moment, she looked stunned, then angry. You're being ridiculous. I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of this. I stepped closer, my voice cold and deliberate. You don't understand? Let me make it clear. You didn't just cheat on me, Amy. You abandoned the trust we built, the life we created, and the family we promised to protect. That's what you've done. Her eyes flashed with anger, and for the first time, a hint of fear. So what now? You're divorcing me over this? For what? A little fun? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I slipped her wedding ring off her finger, holding it up between us. This symbol meant something once, but now, it's just a reminder of what you threw away. Amy's face crumbled, but I wasn't done. You made your choice, Amy. Now, I'm making mine. We're done. Without another word, I turned and walked upstairs, locking the door to the guest bedroom behind me. Her knocks and pleas echoed through the night, but I stayed silent. This wasn't just the end of a fight. It was the end of everything we'd built together. And for the first time, I felt ready to let it go. After the confrontation with Amy, I knew that words alone wouldn't be enough to resolve this. She'd already started shifting the narrative, downplaying what she did, and even acting like I was the unreasonable one. If I wanted justice, and to protect my kids from her reckless decisions, I needed a solid legal plan. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, replaying the recordings I had gathered and looking over the evidence. Amy's friend Jenny's phone call, the photos from Amy's iCloud, and the signed promotional picture were undeniable proof of what had happened. But I wasn't naive. Amy was confident enough to deny everything to my face, which meant she'd likely try to manipulate the situation in court. I needed help. That's when I reached out to Vicky Sampson, a divorce attorney known for her ruthless and strategic approach. If anyone could guide me through this storm, it was her. Sitting in her office, I laid out everything I had, the recordings, the photos, the timeline of events, and Amy's blatant confession during our confrontation. Vicky leaned back in her chair, a small smile playing on her lips. Mark, you've done most of the hard work already. Now it's about strategy. We're going to make sure she can't weasel her way out of this. She laid out a plan that was both meticulous and brutal. The first step was filing for divorce and ensuring Amy was served at her workplace. Vicky explained, "It's about timing. She won't expect this, and the public nature of being served will throw her off balance. People like Amy rely on control and manipulation. We take that away, and she's left scrambling." The next step was digging deeper. Vicky instructed me to check Amy's credit card statements and look for any transactions that could tie her to the club where she met the fake soap star. She also advised me to access her cloud accounts more thoroughly, as there might be additional incriminating evidence. That evening, I sat at Amy's computer and logged into her accounts again. This time, I went through her emails, calendar events, and travel bookings. Sure enough, I found a receipt from the club, confirming the exact night and time she was there. I also discovered additional photos she hadn't deleted yet. Pictures of her cozying up to the man she thought was a soap star. One of the photos was especially damning, with the club's name prominently displayed in the background. I forwarded everything to Vicky, who was thrilled with the results. "This is exactly what we need," she said. "Not only does it prove infidelity, but it also shows her pattern of deceit." But Vicky wasn't just focused on the court case. She wanted to ensure Amy wouldn't get custody of the kids, given her reckless behavior. "We'll emphasize how her choices endangered her health and could potentially harm your family," she explained. Vicky also suggested hiring a private investigator to dig into the man Amy had slept with. Within days, the investigator uncovered a shocking revelation. The man wasn't a soap star at all. He was a con artist, known for targeting married women. Worse, he had a history of spreading sexually transmitted diseases. When Vicky shared this with me, my anger turned to cold determination. "This isn't just about me anymore," I told her. "This is about protecting my kids from her bad decisions." Over the next week, Vicky worked tirelessly to prepare the divorce filing. She included every piece of evidence we'd gathered, from the photos and receipts to the recorded phone call with Jenny. She also drafted a statement emphasizing Amy's negligence as a parent and her inability to make sound decisions. Meanwhile, I stayed quiet at home, pretending nothing had changed. Amy continued to act as if her hall pass was no big deal, even throwing around comments like, "You'll get over it." Little did she know, the legal trap was already set. On the day she was served, everything came crashing down. She was at work, surrounded by her colleagues, when a process server handed her the papers. I heard about it later from mutual friends, how she'd stormed out of the building, humiliated and furious. That night, when she came home, her anger was palpable. She accused me of trying to ruin her life, of blowing things out of proportion. But I said nothing. Instead, I calmly reminded her, "You made your choices, Amy. Now you'll face the consequences." The legal battle was just beginning, but I felt a sense of control I hadn't felt in weeks. With every piece of evidence and every step in our plan, I knew I was closer to reclaiming my life and protecting my family. Amy had underestimated me, and now she was about to learn just how serious I was. The day of the court hearing arrived, and the atmosphere was heavy with tension. I sat in the courtroom, my lawyer, Vicky Sampson, beside me. She exuded calm confidence, but I couldn't stop my hands from shaking. This was it, the moment where the lies, the betrayal, and everything Amy had done would be laid bare. Amy entered the courtroom with her lawyer, looking poised and defiant. She had been playing the victim ever since she was served the divorce papers, telling anyone who would listen that I was overreacting and making baseless accusations. But I knew the truth, and I had the evidence to prove it. The proceedings began with Amy's lawyer arguing that the claims of infidelity were unfounded. He painted her as a devoted wife who had been unjustly accused. "There's no concrete proof," he declared, glancing at the judge. "My client has consistently denied these allegations, and we ask that these claims be dismissed." Vicky stood up, calm and composed. "Your Honor, while the respondent claims there's no proof, we have substantial evidence to the contrary. My client has recordings, photographs, and other documents that confirm Mrs. Butler's infidelity. Amy's lawyer tried to dismiss the evidence as fabricated, but the judge allowed Vicky to proceed. The first piece of evidence presented was the phone call between Jack and Jenny, where Jenny admitted that Amy had left the club with another man. Amy shifted uncomfortably in her seat as the recording played, her lawyer visibly agitated. When Jenny was called to the stand, she initially stuck to her story, denying everything. "I don't recall saying any of that," she said nervously, glancing at Amy. But Vicky was prepared. She played the recording again and asked Jenny if it was her voice. Reluctantly, she admitted it was. The tide began to turn. Amy's lawyer tried to regain control, calling Amy to the stand. She testified that she had done nothing wrong and that the hall pass was just a joke between us. She claimed that I was twisting the story to make her look bad. Vicky leaned forward, her voice calm but cutting. "Mrs. Butler, did you or did you not confess to your husband that you used your hall pass with a man you believed to be Joshua Morrow?" Amy hesitated. I may have said that, but it was just a joke. I never actually did anything." That's when Vicky introduced the photographs. The courtroom fell silent as the pictures of Amy with the man at the club were displayed. One photo showed them dancing, another showed them sitting close together, and the last showed them leaving the club arm in arm. Amy's face went pale, but she quickly tried to recover. "That's not Joshua Morrow," she said, grasping at straws. "That's just someone I met at the club." Vicky smiled, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. "You're absolutely right, Mrs. Butler. That is not Joshua Morrow. In fact, that man is a known con artist who targets married women, posing as a celebrity to lure them in. He has a history of spreading sexually transmitted diseases." Gasps filled the courtroom. Amy's composure cracked as she looked at her lawyer, panic setting in. "That's not true!" she shouted, but the damage was done. Vicky continued, her voice steady. "Your Honor, this evidence not only confirms the respondent's infidelity, but also demonstrates her reckless disregard for the health and well-being of her family. Furthermore, we have proof that she lied under oath, attempting to deceive this court." Amy's lawyer was visibly shaken, fumbling to object, but the judge silenced him. "Mrs. Butler," the judge said sternly, "you've been given every opportunity to present your side, but the evidence against you is overwhelming." The final blow came when Vicky played the recording of my confrontation with Amy at home. Her gleeful admission about her encounter and her dismissive attitude toward our marriage painted a clear picture. The judge ruled in my favor, citing Amy's infidelity and her attempts to deceive the court. He upheld the terms of our prenuptial agreement, granting me full custody of the children and ensuring Amy's visitation rights would be supervised. But it didn't end there. The judge turned to Amy and Jenny, delivering a stern rebuke. "This court takes perjury seriously. Mrs. Butler, your actions have not only destroyed your marriage, but have also wasted this court's time. I find you in contempt and impose a fine for your dishonesty. Mrs. Jenny, your complicity in this matter will not be overlooked either." As Amy left the courtroom, her head hung low, she was met by a reporter and a cameraman who had been tipped off by Vicky. They barraged her with questions, capturing her stunned face on video. I walked out of that courtroom feeling a mix of relief and sadness. The marriage I thought would last forever had ended in the ugliest way possible. But justice had been served. Amy's lies had been exposed, and I could finally begin to rebuild my life. The battle was over, and while the scars would remain, I had won the war for my family and my future. The courtroom drama was over, but Amy's humiliation was just beginning. As she left the courthouse, she was greeted by a swarm of reporters, their cameras flashing and microphones thrust toward her. It was chaos, and Amy, already rattled from the judge's harsh ruling, was completely unprepared for it. "Mrs. Butler, do you have any comment about abandoning your family for a fake soap opera star?" one reporter shouted. "Is it true you lied under oath?" Another chimed in. Their questions were sharp, relentless, and brutally direct. Amy froze for a moment, her face a mix of shock and anger. She tried to push past them, muttering, "No comment." But the reporters weren't backing down. One particularly bold journalist moved closer, asking, "How does it feel to lose custody of your children because of your betrayal?" That was the breaking point. Amy snapped. With a scream that echoed across the courthouse steps, she lunged at the reporter, knocking the microphone out of their hand. Her fury was uncontrollable as she grabbed the journalist by the hair and yanked them to the ground. The scene devolved into chaos, with reporters scrambling and onlookers gasping in shock. It didn't take long for courthouse security and a nearby sheriff's deputy to intervene. They shouted at Amy to stop, but she was too far gone. It wasn't until the deputy used a taser to subdue her that she finally collapsed, screaming and crying on the pavement. The entire incident was caught on camera, and within hours, the footage was everywhere. News outlets aired the video on repeat, framing it as a public meltdown of epic proportions. Social media exploded with commentary, memes, and relentless mockery. Amy became the poster child for infidelity, deceit, and losing control. While I didn't relish her downfall, the spectacle was unavoidable. For years, she'd acted like she was untouchable, dismissing her actions as trivial and expecting no consequences. Now, the world had seen her true colors. Her breakdown wasn't just public. It was permanent. Amy's career, reputation, and dignity were shattered, and for the first time, she had no one to blame but herself. After the dust settled, life felt both heavier and lighter at the same time. The divorce was finalized, and the judge had granted me full custody of our children. Amy was allowed only supervised visitation, a decision that underscored how far she'd fallen. I moved forward, focusing on my kids and trying to rebuild the life she had nearly destroyed. Being a single parent wasn't easy, but it gave me purpose. My days were filled with school drop-offs, soccer games, and quiet evenings helping with homework. It wasn't the life I had envisioned when I married Amy, but it was honest, stable, and mine. My kids were my priority, and I made sure they felt loved and supported, even as they struggled to understand the changes in our family. Amy's public breakdown had left her a shadow of her former self. She lost her job as an assistant principal after the incident at the courthouse went viral. The memes, the news coverage, and the ridicule followed her everywhere. She couldn't step out in public without seeing judgmental stares or hearing whispers. She had become infamous, not for her accomplishments, but for her betrayal and her meltdown. Months passed, and I started to feel a strange kind of peace. The chaos of Amy's choices was no longer consuming my life. But then, as if on cue, she started reaching out. At first, it was sporadic texts, apologizing and asking to talk. I ignored them. Then came the phone calls, always at odd hours, begging me to give her another chance. One day, she convinced me to meet her at her mother's house. I went, not for her, but to make it clear that there was no going back. When I arrived, she looked different, tired, fragile, and desperate. The confident, vibrant woman I had married was gone. She started crying almost immediately. "Mark, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I've hurt you, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I miss you. I miss us. I miss our family." I sat silently, letting her speak. She recounted how the affair wasn't what she thought it would be, how she had been tricked by the man posing as a soap opera star. She admitted that she had lied under oath and to my face, thinking she could somehow salvage her reputation. I was selfish, she continued, her tears falling freely. I didn't see what I was throwing away until it was gone. Please, Mark, I'll do anything to fix this. I'll be the best wife, the best mother. Just give me another chance. Her words hung in the air, heavy with desperation. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I took a deep breath and looked her in the eye. Amy, I believe you're sorry for what happened. I believe you regret what you've lost. But what you don't seem to understand is that it's not just about what you did. It's about the choices you made, over and over, that led us here. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed our family, our kids, and the trust we built. That can't be fixed with apologies. She sobbed harder, but I wasn't finished. What hurts the most isn't the affair itself. It's the way you dismissed it, laughed about it, and acted like I was the crazy one for being upset. You didn't just break my heart, you broke my faith in you. And without trust, there's no marriage. Amy tried to interrupt, but I held up a hand. No, Amy, it's over. I'll always care about you because you're the mother of my children, but I can't and won't be with someone who treats our vows like they're optional. I stood up to leave, and she grabbed my arm, pleading one last time. Mark, please, I'll change. I'll do anything. I gently pulled away, shaking my head. It's too late, Amy. You made your choice, and now I've made mine. I hope you find a way to move forward, but it won't be with me. As I walked out the door, her cries echoed behind me. It was a painful moment, but also a freeing one. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control of my life again. The kids and I were a team now, and while the road ahead wouldn't be easy, I knew we'd be okay. Amy's chapter in my life was over, and I was ready to write the next one, this time on my terms. Looking back, I realized that betrayal doesn't just destroy trust. It redefines everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and commitment. Amy's choices shattered our marriage, but they also gave me the clarity I needed to protect my family and reclaim my life. The road ahead isn't perfect, but it's honest. My kids and I are rebuilding together, one day at a time, and I've found a strength I didn't know I had. To those listening, let this be a reminder. Trust is fragile. Cherish it, protect it, and never take it for granted. And if someone breaks that trust, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and what you deserve. Thank you for listening to my story. Until next time, take care of yourself and the people who truly value you. Goodbye.